You ever felt the walls coming down? Like the people who were with you, who were supposed to be with you, turned against you, like you got pressure, pain, betrayal? Heaven forbid anyone comes to the rescue. Good, because that's where warriors are born. That's the battlefield of the mind. This isn't where you give up. This is where you get up. Psalm 3 is not only a book of the Bible, it's a battle plan. It's what you reach for when the world declares you're done, but your heart is telling you that it's only the start. It's a battle cry to fight back, not with fists, but with faith. Not with fear, but with fire. In the next few minutes, we're taking what it means to stand strong when the world around you is shouting run, to get up when life knocks you down, to speak strength when weakness is all that surrounds you. Because this isn't about mere survival. It's about becoming unstoppable. When enemies are many, when the stakes pile up one on top of another, when you look around and you feel like everything is against you, most people shatter. Most people shrink. Most people start counting their obstacles instead of remembering their strength. But here's the truth that most forget. Just because your enemies increase doesn't mean your power decreases. In fact, it means the opposite. The pressure doesn't break you, it activates you. When the weight of life feels heavier, it's not a sign you're weak, it's an invitation to get stronger. David, the author of Psalm 3, knew this better than anyone. He wasn't writing in a time of peace and prosperity. He was running for his life, betrayed by his own son. The people who were closest to him betrayed him. He was outnumbered, outpositioned, and according to the voices around him, out of moves. That's what verse 1 tells us. Lord, how are they increased that trouble me? How many are they that arise against me? It's not poetic language. It's hard reality. This is a man confronted by the kind of betrayal that would break others. But David didn't break. He didn't flee from the flames. He stood and walked into them, because when your enemies multiply, your strength does as well. See, life is going to try you. Life doesn't give you breakthroughs before breakdowns, and every single obstacle that comes against you is a chance to come above it. It's under the pressure that your true strength surfaces, not when all is comfortable, not when the world is with you, but when you're by yourself, questioned and encircled. That's when you discover what you're really made of. That's when you're no longer a disciple of comfort, but a warrior of purpose. Your foes will multiply, but so does your focus, your resolve, and your grit. The pushback illumines the mission. The resistance answers the direction. So many people believe trouble signifies doing something incorrectly. They believe conflict is an indicator to stop. But what if it's the contrary? What if the growing resistance is proof that you're on the right path? Think about it. Nobody attacks what isn't a threat. Nobody aims at what doesn't matter. The fact that the pressure is increasing could be the biggest confirmation that you're stepping into something powerful. When the enemy sees momentum, it tries to create fear. When your purpose gains ground, the attacks intensify. But that's not your cue to back away. It's your cue to dig deeper, push harder, and stand taller. You don't become stronger when you're not challenged. You become stronger right in the middle of them. Strength is not developed in safety, it's developed in storms. It's simple to speak of faith, courage, and confidence when things are going well. But authentic character is developed in fire. Your adversaries will multiply, but so will your determination. So will your concentration. So will your reliance on something more than yourself. It's during those pressure cooker times that you shed what you don't need, strip away the distractions, and get clear on what really truly matters. And it's in that clarity that you emerge. Don't confuse resistance with rejection. Don't think challenge equals condemnation. It may be that the more enemies you have, the nearer you are to a breakthrough. And when you cling through the storm, when you remain rooted through the shaking, you emerge different. You emerge stronger, wiser, unshakable. The opposition did not arrive to destroy you, it arrived to train you. And if you allow it, it will. If you harness it, it will lift you up. Because when your enemies multiply, toughness isn't a choice, it's your survival kit. Don't sweat when the temperature gets turned up. Don't buckle when the number of enemies grows. That's not the moment to doubt your journey. It's the moment to recall your mission. You weren't engineered for convenience. You were engineered for greatness. And greatness is tempered in challenge. So when the stress mounts, you mount along with it. When the voices rise against you, let your inner voice rise louder. When they say you're surrounded, remember, you're also supported. Not by the crowd, but by the calling inside of you. Not by applause, but by alignment with your purpose. When David surrounded, he didn't break, he proclaimed. He asserted his reality, But then he asserted his wellspring of power. That's how you rise. You don't disown the existence of enemies. You proclaim the existence of power inside of you. You recognize the storm, but more in the strength. And that transition, that choice, that mentality, that's where resilience begins. There will be days when all you want to do is quit. When the doubting voice rings louder than your dream. When fear feels more tangible than fear. But it's on those days that you get to choose. Collapse under pressure or battle through it. Shatter or construct. Surrender or become stronger. Every test is an assessment, and every assessment is an invitation to become greater. You don't become strong by fleeing. You become strong by rising when everything around you wants to make you sit down. That's what Psalm 3 is teaching us. David was surrounded, betrayed, shattered, but not defeated. And neither are you. Let the enemies come up. Let the pressure mount. It only means you're going higher. Now consider this. What gave David such confidence? What made him so strong to utter boldly in the eye of the storm? It was easy. He knew who his shield was. That's what verse 3 explains. But you, O Lord, are a shield for me, my glory and the lifter of my head. Look at the turn. First, he explains the turmoil. Enemies multiplying, voices against him, pressures building. But then, he looks inward. He looks upward. He reminds himself, I'm not here undefended. I'm not going there alone. I have a shield about me. Not any shield, a shield from above, an unbreakable shield. That's the point exactly. Your power does not lie in faking that everything is fine. Your power lies in recognizing where your safety really lies. You don't have to make your own protection. You don't have to dictate every result. You just have to believe in the shield that guards you. That shield is purpose. That shield is faith. That shield is understanding that you are covered even when you surround. And when you actually internalize that, not even just with your head, but in your bones, that's when you move differently. You cease to walk in fear and begin to walk in confidence. You cease to react to attacks and begin to respond with intention. You cease to duck your head in defeat and raise your head in determination. Because that is what he does. He raises your head. He doesn't merely protect you from what's in front of you. He renews what's inside you. He removes the weight. He removes the shame. He removes the fear. And he fills you with clarity, courage, and confidence. The world will attempt to pull your head down. Situations will attempt to crush your stance. But you were not created to walk with your head down. You were created to walk in boldness, head held high, because of whom you are shielded. When you begin to rely on that protection, not merely your ability, your effort, or your talent, but the presence of something more shielding you, everything is different. You walk differently. You talk differently. You do not freak, you ready yourself. You do not huddle, you stand. Because you are not standing alone. When the world tells you that you are done, rise up anyway. That sentence alone distinguishes between the average and the relentless. Life tends to circle you with noise. Voices telling you you can't, that you've fallen too far, that your comeback is impossible. People will gaze upon your failure, your breakdown, your rock bottom moment, and think it's your last. But what they don't realize is this. You weren't made to take your direction from their conclusions. Just because they see the finish line doesn't mean you are. Just because they tell you you're finished doesn't mean you are. Because your value isn't measured by what people think, it's rooted in purpose. David heard that sound. Psalm 3 simply states it. Many are saying of my soul, there is no help for him in God. Do you understand how massive that is? It's not that they didn't believe in him, they believed he couldn't be helped. Not just out of ideas, but out of redemption. That's a different plane of criticism. But what did David do with all that? Did he allow their skepticism to set his fate? No. He changed gears. No, he changed gears. He took the things said about him and refused to allow them to be the things said over him. The world will always speak. They will look at your past and declare it makes you ineligible. They will highlight your failures as definitive. They will whisper in your ear, hoping you'll believe them as true. But here's the catch. You have to decide whose voice you'll give power to. The world's judgment is not your reality. Their accusations don't have to be your limitations. Just because they talk doesn't mean that you hear. Because there's a greater truth out there. A truth that doesn't disintegrate when situations change. A truth that states you are better than what you lost, better than what they told you, and better than the worst thing that has ever happened to you. People will tell you you're done because it makes them feel better about not having attempted. They'll tell you that you're broken so they can remain secure in their own fear. They don't see your process. so they misclassify your pause as a stop. There's a great difference between being knocked down and being counted out. Falling isn't failure, getting back up is not. And you possess something within you that was designed to get up, because even in the ashes, even in the rejection, even when it seems like nobody is cheering for you, because the comeback is not for the crowd, it's for the calling. So when the world declares you're done, rise up anyhow. When the door shuts, knock again, or create your own. When they tell you it's over, catch your breath and remember, it's only over if you say it is. Your rise doesn't require permission. It doesn't require popularity. It just requires a decision. One of flame in your heart that says, I'm not finished yet. That's what Psalm 3 is saying. That when you're faced with accusations, abandonment, betrayal, and impossible odds, you don't fold. You stand up, even when they tell you you can't, especially when they tell you you can't. Because your story isn't told by the critics. It's told by the one who breathes life into your lungs every morning. And as long as you're breathing, you're not done. You're still fighting. The only difference between the people who make it and the people who give up is that capability to get up again and again and again. No clap, no cheers, no somebody behind you pushing you along. You get up anyway, because something within you won't stop. And this is what's amazing. Sometimes the most incredible thing you can do is nothing spectacular. It's getting up one more time. It's opening your eyes when the entire world wants to leave them closed. Oh, it's starting another day when yesterday nearly defeated you. But you do it anyway, not because it's easy, but because quitting would be the true defeat. And you didn't come this far to give up now. That sort of spirit, that defiance when you've been defeated, that's what makes the difference. That's what creates legacies. Now consider what David does in the next verse. He says, I lay down and slept. I awoke, for the Lord sustained me. That line may sound trite, but it's revolutionary. Because most people can't sleep during a storm. Most people can't be at peace when they're surrounded. But David rested, slept, and awoke, not because his enemies vanished, but because he had something greater than his surroundings that he trusted. He rested not in security, but in sustaining power. Sleep is symbolic. It's not just physical rest, it's surrender of the mind. It's being able to release even when things don't get worked out. To have peace amidst chaos. To give up attempting to control every result and instead have faith in the process. That's true power. That's where peace starts, not when all the pieces are healed, but when you understand you're held even in the midst of the mess. Think about it. How many lie awake at night replaying their mistakes, predicting disaster, fretting over every potential consequence? Their minds never rest. Their hearts never rest. That's not living. That's mere survival. But when David says, I lay down and slept, he's showing us something revolutionary. That real strength doesn't always scream and shout. Sometimes it's silent assurance. It's faith that doesn't require explanations. And it's rest that isn't based on resolution, but on relationship. That's the kind of faith that sustains you. And the next part is just as powerful. I awoke, for the Lord sustained me. Understand this, David didn't just sleep. He got back up. Bump! And the reason wasn't luck, wasn't strategy, wasn't even skill. It was sustenance. He awoke not because the war was won, but because he had been carried through the night, nourished by the storm. There's a distinction between surviving on adrenaline and surviving on something more. Adrenaline wanes. Determination exhausts. But when you are sustained, carried, sheltered, empowered, you don't simply survive, you rise reborn. We exist in a culture that celebrates hustle, burnout, pushing and pushing and pushing until you break. But there's a greater rhythm out there, and out there. A strength that doesn't drain you, it rejuvenates you. That's what David knew. That's why he could rest when others were freaking out. That's why he could emerge when others were fleeing. Because he knew who was upholding him. His strength wasn't derived from outside sources. It was coming from the inside out. You may be in a season currently where everything is shaky, where sleep does not come easy, where peace seems far away, where you're tired but can't slow down. This is your reminder. You don't need to keep it all together. You don't need to battle every fight with your own strength. You are permitted to rest. You are permitted to breathe. You can release for a moment, not because things are fine, but because you know you're not alone. David wasn't faking that his enemies didn't exist. He wasn't ignorant of the threats that surrounded him, but he made a decision. He opted for rest, not worry. Trust, not worry. Trust, not control. And by doing that, he woke up, sustained, strengthened. Ready? When you find your strength in something beyond your struggle, you don't just hang on, You emerge, you rise, not empty, but renewed, not bitter, but better, not afraid, but anchored. You're not surrounded by fear. You're surrounded by purpose. That shift in mindset changes everything. Most people, when they feel pressure closing in from all sides, immediately assume it's fear, failure, or defeat. They look at their circumstances and label themselves based on how trapped they feel. But what if the surrounding isn't a prison? It's positioning. What if all that's closing in on you is really driving you deeper into the very purpose you were born to live? David was no fool. He saw the figures, he sensed the threat. Psalm 3 tells us that thousands had turned against him. That wasn't a figure of speech. He literally had thousands of people against him. But take note of what he didn't do. He never let the magnitude of the opposition warp the magnitude of his calling. He never let the measure of fear surpass the voice of truth. Because he recognized something most people have forgotten. Being surrounded doesn't necessarily mean you're losing. It may just mean you're in the right place. Purpose isn't created in peace. It's uncovered in pressure. You don't find out who you are when everything is convenient. You find out who you are when you're backed into a corner, when every option seems to vanish, and all that's left is your decision to stand or retreat. The enemy wants you to believe that the pressure means panic, that the surrounding means you're stuck, that the fear is confirmation you're in over your head. But the reality is sometimes that pressure is God putting you exactly where growth is unavoidable. Surrounded doesn't have to give rise to fear, it can fuel purpose. Because now, there is nowhere to flee. There is no distraction anymore. There is nothing to hold on to except what is real, what is unshakable. You begin seeing differently. You cease running and begin rising. That's the time when the pretend version of you incinerates, and the actual you begins to arise. Not refined, not flawless, but mighty, purpose-filled, bravery-full. Because fear always appears where purpose is highest. It's the resistance that naturally attempts to keep you in a tiny space when you're intended to expand. When David was trapped, he wasn't living in denial, but he also didn't give fear power. So remember, before a miracle, there's always a wrestle. He looked out at what was around him, but he engaged in who was inside of him. That's the adjustment that opens up everything. You begin to know that what is around you is not your foe, it's your space for change. It's the weight room where your soul becomes stronger. It's the battlefield where your purpose gets honed. You don't need to flee from what is around you. You need to stand in it boldly. Think about it this way. A diamond only develops in pressure. Gold only is refined in fire. Warriors only emerge in war. So if you're feeling trapped, if tension is at a fever pitch, and the walls are closing in, congrats, you're in training. Not to survive, but to make an impact. You are not being punished. You are being prepared. And each and every voice that tells you you're not enough is merely revealing the enormity of what is on its way through you. Here's the test. Most stop there. They feel fear and declare it final. Feel surrounded and declare it They allow pressure to convince them that purpose doesn't exist. But the ones who conquer, the ones who walk in purpose, are the ones who see this plain fact. You're not surrounded by fear unless you fuel it. You are enveloped by possibility, by God's plan, by the next level waiting to be unfolded. Just lean into it. Stand your ground in the middle of it. Quit requesting the fear to depart and begin requesting the courage to proceed. Fear is never evidence you are failing. It is usually the indication you are on the threshold of something significant. And when you choose to walk through the fear instead of cowering below it, you tap into the next iteration of yourself, the one that isn't dictated by fear, but honed by it. That's what it is like to be surrounded by purpose. It's to have every force that attempts to shatter you instead constructing you. Every voice attempting to silence you, assisting you in finding greater clarity in your own. You were never destined to flee from the pressure. You were destined to stand in the midst of it. Your name is bigger than your struggle. That sentence by itself has the potential to liberate people. Too many go about knowing that what they've endured is who they are. They carry their past as their personality. They bear their wounds like a name tag, big. But what you've been through is not your identity, it's your evidence. Evidence that you've been through fire and you're still standing. Evidence that you've survived storms others didn't. Evidence that your story didn't stop where the pain started. David had every reason to let his circumstances define him. Rejected, chased, hunted down by his own flesh and blood. That kind of pain is deep. That type of betrayal wounds the soul. But he would not allow the challenge around him to redefine himself. He clung to his identity, his calling, his anointing, his God-given value, even when all around him indicated otherwise. That is not denial. That is power. That is deciding on identity rather than insecurity. That is deciding on truth rather than trauma. Your adversity may define your path, but it doesn't get to define you. The names life attempts to label you with: failure, addict, worthless, abandoned. Those are not your name. They're chapters, not titles. Temporary circumstances, not permanent identity. And when you realize who you are, actually know it, you no longer allow adversity to be the lens through which you see yourself. You no longer gauge your worth by your scars and begin gauging it by your survival. Identity is what holds you fast when all else crumbles. It's the anchor that keeps you from being knocked off balance when life hurls wave after wave against your serenity. And the thing about adversity is, it's loud. It yells. It demands attention. It demands that you bow to it, that you identify with it. But identity is quiet. Identity doesn't yell. Identity speaks. Soft, firm, unwavering. And when you decide to hear that still, stable voice over the din of your opposition, then you rise. You go through the same fire, but you don't emerge smelling like ash. You emerge stronger, sharper, more keen. They will attempt to define you by your worst moments. They will remind you of your failures, point out your weaknesses, rehash your defeats. But they didn't build you, so they can't name you. You need to take that power back. You need to choose that your identity is not something that's external or something that life did to you, but something that you were born to be. And once you get grounded in that, adversity turns into fuel. It doesn't make you weaker. It makes you stronger. Because suffering, as difficult as it is, tends to be the mirror that shows us what's really in there. Anybody can discourse about resilience, but you don't know you possess it until you've had to employ it. You don't know the depth of your faith until it's tried. You don't know how loud your voice is until it has to pierce the din of pain, fear, and loss. That's what adversity does. It brings the unseen to the surface, and that's why identity is everything. When you know who you are, you stop reacting to adversity and start responding from strength. You no longer allow yourself to be pushed around by every situation, every storm, every loss. You start moving with intent, speaking with conviction, living with purpose. Your feet become solid ground. Your heart becomes unmovable. You don't see adversity as the enemy. You see it as the doorway. Not to pain, but to purpose. Not to destruction, but to destiny. Because on a deep level, your identity is not what happened to you. It's how you rise from it. Speak from faith, not fear. The second your mouth opens, you tell what's dwelling in your heart. Each word that escapes your lips is either nourishing your future or igniting your fear. People don't even know how much power their words hold. They speak by habit, by emotion, by reaction, without ever realizing that what they say becomes what they believe, and what they believe becomes how they live. Your words create your world. It either places you in fear or it places you in faith. There is no middle ground. Each word either adds to your strength or it wrecks your momentum. David was surrounded, betrayed, and besieged in Psalm 3. He did not allow fear to dictate his words. He did not repeat the words of those who told him there was no assistance for him. He was speaking another language. He declared, "But you, O Lord, are a shield from me, my glory, and the lifter of my head." That wasn't wishful thinking. That wasn't denial. That was faith exercised. Faith doesn't wait for the circumstances to get better before it speaks. Faith speaks during the middle of the storm. It proclaims victory before seeing the result. It names what is not as though it were already. Fear demands you express your doubt, your panic, your fearfulness. It demands you put words to defeat so that your body, your actions, and your choices reflect that paradigm. But when you talk from fear, you construct walls rather than bridges. You define limitation before possibility as a chance to breathe. The words you say become the script of your life. So if all you ever do is talk about what's not working, what's not right, what's not going to happen, you program yourself to accept that those things are everlasting. You confirm your limitations rather than transcending them. But when you talk from faith, you transform the whole environment around you. You alter your inner chemistry. You rewire your brain to seek hope rather than despair. You don't deny everything is okay, but you state what is real even when your emotions want to tell a different story. You say, "I am still shielded." You say, "There is still a path." You say, "I might be encircled, but I am not alone." And those words anchor you. They keep you grounded in the storm. They don't take away the mess, but they redefine your stance amidst it. Speaking out of faith doesn't imply that you deny reality. It means that you don't allow fear to author your narrative. You reclaim the pen. You opt for a response. You set the context of your circumstance using truth rather than trauma. David might have mimicked his fear. He might have gotten hysterical. He might have conformed to the crowd. But he didn't. He raised his vocabulary. And that's what leaders do. That's what warriors do. That's what warriors do. That's what people do when they know that their words are tools of creation, not mere noise. You don't have to be certain of the answers to speak from faith. You just need to know to whom you are committed. Faith isn't about confidence in the outcome. It's about faith in the one who holds the outcome. And when you ground your speech in that, your heart might tremble, but your soul will not waver. You cease to give power to fear. You cease to ally with darkness. You cease to live as a victim and begin to speak like a victor. And gradually, your life starts showing that shift. It's simple to talk faith when all is well, but the true test is what you say when it all goes wrong. When the bank account is drained, when the doctor's words are negative, when the doors close and close and close and close. That is when you learn what you believe in. That is when you either echo your fear or proclaim your faith. And that decision makes all the difference, because your words are not explanations. They are affirmations. They are not reflections. They're bullets. Handle them carefully. Use them with purpose. Speak from faith and watch how everything begins to shift. Victory is not in your circumstances. It's in your calling. If you base your sense of triumph on how things look around you, you'll always be one bad day away from collapse. Collapse. Circumstances are fragile. They change fast. One phone call, one email, one loss, one delay, and your peace is shattered. Your energy is depleted. Your belief is shattered. But when you live from calling rather than circumstance, you build an internal resilience that no outside force can break. You cease chasing conditions and begin to anchor to conviction. David's triumph was not the lack of enemies. His triumph was knowing that despite the presence of enemies, his mission remained. His mission wasn't ended because the people around him flipped against him. His identity hadn't been revoked because of the crisis. He didn't have to have the battlefield silenced to have faith. He knew where he came from. He knew what he had been sent for, and that gave him an unshakable advantage. While other men would break in pressure, he remained steadfast and steadfast. While others were lost in fear, he came back to what was real. Victory wasn't a moment. It was an attitude. That's the transition most people never undertake. They wait for the conditions to approve of their victory. They wait for the outside to tell them they can be powerful. But true power doesn't arrive from the outside in. It arrives from the inside out. You step forward in triumph when you know who you are and what you're here to do, no matter what's going on around you. You can have turmoil on all sides and remain peaceful in the center. You can stumble back and not lose your pace. You can get knocked and yet continue. That is what it means to live from calling. Your calling does not disappear in the tempest. It glows even more. Adversity doesn't erase your mission. It exposes it. When everything else falls away, your calling remains awesome. And if you're breathing, you're not finished. That means your assignment still stands. That means the vision is still alive. The circumstances might have changed, but your purpose hasn't. And once you grasp that, once you stop letting temporary things define your eternal assignment, you become unstoppable. You no longer measure progress by how much you can see, but you measure it by how loyal you've remained. Too many allow setbacks to redefine their narrative. They lose their job, and they call themselves a failure. They have a breakup, and they call themselves unworthy. They're delayed, and they conclude they're disqualified. But none of those things define you. None of those things undo your purpose. Undo your purpose. Your calling preceded the crisis, and it will survive it. The triumph was never about staying away from issues. It was about going forward despite them. When you ground your triumph in your calling, you cease to live reactively and begin to live deliberately. You do not wince at each wave. You do not wince at each wave. You do not bow under each blow. You arise with purpose. You move with direction. You know what you're doing here, and that makes you a threat to every deception, every fear, every distraction, because you can't be controlled by circumstance when you're rooted in mission. You can't be rattled by opinion when you're firm in vision, and that's the power David possessed. He knew the war wasn't about him, the calling was. He knew the risk all around him wasn't more than the destiny inside him. So he did not panic. He prayed. He did not back down. He remembered. And in the remembering, he realigned. He recentered himself. He stepped back into the truth. that the victory was already his, not because of what he could control, but because of who he was and what he was created to do. You do not require everything to go right in order to win. You must walk in alignment with your purpose. You must have faith that what you're carrying is greater than what you're dealing with. And when you do, situations no longer become your scoreboard. You're no longer a slave to results. You're no longer chasing validation, but you start walking in authority. Because true victory was never about winning at every moment. It was about never giving up on what you were called to be. You embarked on this journey in the midst of a storm, but now you have a sword in your hand. Your foes might multiply, but your strength exceeds them. Fear can yell, but your faith shouts louder. You now realize that the fight isn't out there. It's in here. It's not what's around you that determines you. It's your position. It's not what they say, you say it. You don't have to wait for the circumstances to get different to have peace. You have to shift the way you arrive in those circumstances. And when you rest, really rest, in the truth that you are guarded, chosen, and called, you no longer walk like a victim. You walk like a warrior. You've learned to speak out of faith, not fear. You've learned true victory isn't in your comfort zone. It's in your calling. You don't wait for miracles. You become the miracle. You don't pursue strength. You possess it. So next time life knocks you down, don't merely respond. Remember, recall who you are, recall what's within you, and recall that even when you're overwhelmed, you remain standing. Because your tale is not finished, don't merely listen to this, live it. Don't merely feel encouraged. Stand up and fight. The storm is not your demise. It's your proving ground. Let them witness. For this is the beginning of the unstoppable.